Scientists have never stopped searching for extraterrestrial life, and there are many reasons to think that we might not be alone. We know that the universe is big enough to have other life forms out there, and we've found plenty of planets that could support life as we know it. So with all this going for us, why haven't we found any aliens yet? In recent years, researchers have found thousands of exoplanets, some of which could have the conditions necessary to support life. However, we can only do so much from Earth. Luckily, NASA has given us a new set of eyes in the form of the James Webb Telescope. This telescope will peer deep into space to find the building blocks of life on distant worlds. And while it won't necessarily find aliens, it could find the first real signs that there is life out there. With all this in mind, here are 5 ways that the James Webb Space Telescope will help us find aliens. The James Webb Telescope is humanity's latest and greatest invention to help us see things in our universe that would otherwise be impossible to see. This telescope is an international project between NASA, the European Space Agency, and the Canadian Space Agency. It was launched on Christmas Day 2021 and arrived at its destination, the Lagrange Point 2, or L2, on January 23, 2022. L2 is a spot in space that is very far away from Earth, about 1.5 million kilometers away. There's actually 4 points like this called Lagrange points, but L2 is the one that we're interested in because it's perfect for a telescope. There are already telescopes that are looking at L2, such as the Planck Space Observatory and the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory. But those telescopes are focused on looking at the universe in wavelengths of light that we can't see, such as infrared and ultraviolet. James Webb will be able to see even further by looking in the mid-infrared spectrum. This will allow James Webb to see things that are very far away or very dim, such as galaxies that are billions of light years away from Earth. It will also be able to see inside clouds of dust where stars and planetary systems are forming. This could help scientists learn more about how Earth and the solar system formed. But what does this have to do with finding aliens? Well, one of the main goals of the James Webb Telescope is to look for the building blocks of life on other worlds. Scientists know that life as we know it needs certain things to survive, such as liquid water, a source of energy, and organic molecules. The James Webb Telescope will be able to look for these things on exoplanets that could support life. For example, the telescope will be able to look for water vapor in the atmospheres of exoplanets. If it finds water vapor, then it could mean that there is liquid water on the planet. Water is essential for life as we know it, so this would be a very exciting discovery. The James Webb Telescope will also be able to look for signs of photosynthesis in the atmospheres of planets. Photosynthesis is the process that plants use to convert sunlight into energy. If the telescope finds signs of photosynthesis, then it could mean that there is life on the planet that is using sunlight for energy. Again, this would be a very exciting discovery. The James Webb Telescope will also be able to look for organic molecules in the atmospheres of exoplanets. Organic molecules are molecules that contain carbon-hydrogen bonds. These molecules are the building blocks of life as we know it. So if the telescope finds them on an exoplanet, it could be a sign that there is life on that planet. Of course, finding these things on an exoplanet doesn't necessarily mean that there is life on that planet, but it would certainly be a good sign to look for. One of the most exciting things about the James Webb Telescope is that it will be able to look for these things on planets in the habitable zone of their star. The habitable zone is the region around a star where liquid water could exist on a planet. It's important to remember that just because a planet is in the habitable zone of its star doesn't mean that it actually has liquid water or that there is life on it. It just means that the conditions are right for liquid water to exist. The James Webb Telescope will also be able to look for planets in the habitable zone of nearby stars. There are several stars that are relatively close to Earth, such as Proxima Centauri and Alpha Centauri. All 3 of these stars are in the Alpha Centauri system, and Proxima Centauri has been found to have at least 2 planets. One of the planets is in the habitable zone of its star, so the James Webb Telescope will be able to look for signs of life on that planet. The James Webb Telescope will be able to see in more detail than any other telescope before it. It will also be able to see in a wider range of wavelengths, which will allow it to see things that other telescopes have missed. Overall, the James Webb Telescope is an incredibly powerful tool that will help scientists answer some of the fundamental questions about the universe. And one of the most exciting things about it is the possibility that it may find aliens. Before the James Webb Telescope was launched, the Kepler Space Telescope was responsible for finding thousands of exoplanets. Kepler did this by staring at a small patch of sky and looking for the dimming of stars as its planets passed in front of them. With this data, scientists have been able to get an idea of how many planets are out there that could support life. According to NASA, there are at least 50 billion Earth-like planets out there. These planets are the right size to have liquid water, and they're in the habitable zone of their star. Of course, just because a planet is the right size and in the habitable zone doesn't mean that it actually has liquid water or life. But it's still an amazing statistic and gives us hope that we're not alone in the universe. The James Webb Telescope will be able to study some of these exoplanets in more detail and look for signs of life. One of the first exoplanets that James Webb will look at is WASP 39b. This is a very hot gas giant that is around 700 light-years away from Earth. It's in the habitable zone of its star, which is exciting, but it's also very far away. This means that James Webb will have to work very hard to be able to see WASP 39b and look for signs of life. Another exoplanet that James Webb will look at is TRAPPIST-1e. This is a rocky planet that is around 40 light-years away from Earth. It's in the habitable zone of its star, but it's also very small. This means that James Webb will have to work very hard to be able to see TRAPPIST-1e and look for signs of life. James Webb won't be the only telescope looking for aliens. In fact, there are several other telescopes that are also in the hunt. For example, the Very Large Array is a radio telescope that is used to detect radio waves from space. Radio waves are a type of electromagnetic radiation that is emitted by charged particles. This means that radio waves can be used to detect things like stars, galaxies, and black holes. The Very Large Array has been used to detect signals from space that could be from aliens. However, so far, none of these signals have been confirmed. The Breakthrough Listen project is another effort that is underway to find aliens. This is a 10-year project that is funded by the Breakthrough Foundation. The project uses radio telescopes to listen for signals from space that could be from aliens. The project has been searching for signals from over 1,000 stars that are in the habitable zone of their star. So far, the project has not found any evidence of life. However, it's still very early days and the search is ongoing. On Earth, the search for life isn't limited to telescopes. In fact, rovers and probes are also being used to look for signs of life. For example, NASA's Curiosity rover is currently exploring the surface of Mars. The rover is looking for signs of past or present life on Mars. Curiosity has already made some exciting discoveries, such as organic molecules. These molecules are the building blocks of life as we know it. So the discovery of these molecules on Mars is very exciting. As time goes on, we'll continue to look for aliens using telescopes, rovers, and other methods. The James Webb Telescope is an incredibly powerful tool that will help us find the building blocks of life on other worlds. If it finds these building blocks, then it could be a sign that there is life on other planets. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe for more videos about space. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.